leading a discussion with Alessandro Pini about how Vertiv transformed their Betterworks experience with customized guides. So first, by way of introduction, my name is Ingrid Cullen. I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager here at Betterworks. I've been with Betterworks for about 5 years now, and I work with a lot of our larger organizations as they're scaling their programs for OKRs and performance enablement. And I'm joined by Alessandro, who I've been working with for a few years now. So Alessandro, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Ingrid. Hi to everyone. I'm Alessandro Pini. I'm working at Vertiv. I joined the company more or less 5 years ago, and I'm covering right now the role of project manager for some of our learning and development global programs, such as the onboarding program, mentoring, and also performance management. In parallel, I carry on some activities to coordinate L&OD programs at the EMEA level. I'm based in Italy, in Bologna. There's a city in the center of Italy, and that's me.
Great,
Happy
thank
to be
you.
here.
Great, thanks. And a little background on Vertiv. Vertiv's been working with Betterworks for a little over 4 years now, and uses our full suite. So OKRs, conversations, feedback, recognition. Across, I think you guys have almost 14,000 employees globally. So a fairly large program at scale. And Vertiv started using Betterworks guides a little over a year ago. And so what are Betterworks guides? The thing we'll be discussing today. These are in-app pop-ups and notifications. So if you're a current Betterworks customer, you're actually already familiar with guides, even if you didn't realize it. So when we have a new feature, when we have a release, we'll put a little pop-up, a notification. If you are a current customer, you would have seen this pop-up for this webinar as well. And this is a way that we can push information directly to people where they are, include kind of tooltips and relevant information. And one thing that we've started to make available is the option to customize guides and to make guides available to customers to really build them out to meet your organization's particular needs. And this is available as part of our support account manager package, which includes an enhanced support service. So we'd be able to help you set up and maintain all of those guides. But Vertiv was the first customer to come to us who was really interested in this. So we started this partnership and kind of seeing the guides to solve one particular problem, but then Alessandro and his team got really creative. So today we'll be sharing some of the different ways that you can use guides. And I meant to mention this earlier, but we're happy to answer any questions. You can post them in the chat. And if we don't get to them during the discussion, we'll have a Q&A section at the end. So you can put your questions either in the chat or in the Q&A section directly. So to start off, Alessandro, we can go into how does Vertiv use guides and kind of the initial use case and what you did.
Absolutely, absolutely. As Ingrid was saying, we started adopting the guides for a specific purpose. That was having a quick way to have the translation of our conversations with our managers inside Betterworks. We tried a different way in the past, having a specific conversation set up in Betterworks, but it was really demanding in terms of manage all the conversation from different languages. So we implemented the guide for this reason, to have the translation of specific languages. As we are a global company spread in all the regions, EMEA, Asia Pacific, and Americas. So we have different locations with different needs in terms of languages. So we needed to have a quick tool to make this translation visible. For this reason, we adopted this kind of guides. And as you can see here from this example, here we are inside a conversation page, a conversation between the managers and the direct report. And here inside, as you can see, the first box is a guide related to the instruction around how to take the conversation. And if we can go to the next, you will see also the other version. So we have the instruction and also all the specific questions that you can see on the right part of the screen, but on the left we have the translations. So again, we needed to find a quick way, and we found it using adopting this kind of guides.
Yeah, and some things that I would add here that I think worked well when you started using the guides versus the separate conversation templates for different languages is, as you mentioned, having multiple templates for the same conversation was a lot for the administrators to manage. And so using one template, but having the pop-ups allowed, it was a simpler process because there was just kind of one template to report on. And the guides work based on the language that the user has selected in their settings. So in this case, there's a user who has Italian as their language, and so they're automatically seeing the Italian. If the language were set to Chinese or Spanish or Russian, they would see the appropriate language there as well. And one thing that came up that I thought was interesting was that Vertiv does have a number of situations where a manager and a direct report, they may speak together in one language, but have different language settings. Maybe the manager's system is defaulted to English and the direct report system is defaulted to their local language because that's just what they prefer. And this way, they're still receiving the same conversation. It's just that it's customized for their particular language.
Exactly. So this was another need that we had. Having a conversation between a manager based, I don't know, in Europe, for example, with a direct report based in Asia Pacific. So that using this kind of guides, direct reports or the manager can select by themselves the specific language and having the specific box in their page. Yep.
Yeah, so this is where Vertiv started. This was really the first need that they had for the pop-ups. But as I mentioned, once Alessandro got familiar with this, started to find a number of other ways to use these.
Exactly. This is another example because we started with the translations, but then we found out that we have several ways through that we can communicate several things in Betterworks through these guides. And this is another example of a guide that we designed and we created when we implemented the home page, this new feature in Betterworks, the home page. And so we wanted to implement an easy way to communicate our employees about this new feature, and then giving them some guidance and some direction in terms of what we are talking about, and adding also some links to gather more info. And this is an example of a two-steps guide, because with guide, we imagine this one box, but we have the possibility to create a sort of, we can say, virtual leaflet. So we can have one page, as you can see here, with maybe the general information about this new feature. And then adding some button, as you can see here, we can go to the next page that we created to go into details. So again, a new feature, general overview, clicking on the next, here we have the possibility to add further information. For example, a link to a video tutorial that I remember Ingrid provided us, but also to attach a specific slide in PowerPoint using another format, for example, where we give some guidance on how to set up the home page as a main page, as a landing page for Betterworks. So clicking on how to set, I don't know if we have the print screen of it, but if you click on how to set up, you will have also another page with the tutorial, with the the several steps on how to set this new feature.
Yeah. And some things, so the conversation pop-ups that you guys saw, the first one with the instruction was kind of a general pop-up that appeared. The translations for the questions was appeared as sort of a tooltip on the side. And then this one here, it's showing something that has multiple steps, so multiple things that people can click through. And as I mentioned, we use guides at Betterworks ourselves. And so when we launch a new feature, like when we launched Homepage, we did do a guide that went out to customers explaining the new feature. But Vertiv chose that instead of using our guide, they wanted to make their own custom guide. So it's a little bit more specific to their population. And those links and resources, I think actually went to the Vertiv SharePoint. So it was kind of Vertiv specific materials. Oh, and then, yeah, actually this is going in.
The third page.
Yeah. This is the third page. So it's showing this was a slide that was included in some training materials that Vertiv had put together. And so it put it right into Betterworks. So it's creating that connection where employees are seeing the same content that they're seeing in their other training and their other communications. And so it feels very specific to the organization.
Exactly. So the idea was to create a connection also to our format, our tutorial that anyhow we communicate through our SharePoint or our intranet. But through this guide, we can also upload images and PowerPoint saved as JPEG, for example, and also adding several links to external pages.
And then this was another use you guys came up with.
Exactly. This is related to LinkedIn Learning. So we recently embraced this program, LinkedIn Learning. So the wide offering from LinkedIn in terms of training. And here we had another purpose. Facilitating to our employees the possibility to know about this new program, about this LinkedIn Learning. And then we decided to, again, designing a badge info guide. Here, what we did is taking the icon, the info icon, we just we enlarge it and we put the title, LinkedIn Learning, and we attached a guide where we explain why we are using LinkedIn Learning, all the benefit that you can have through this wide offering available, and also a specific session for managers. As you can see here, we also added some link and also the direct link to the SharePoint. And with this guide, you can decide also where you can locate this kind of message. Because, for example, this is another example of conversation between managers and direct reports. So we decided to put this information inside them because we thought it was the right place, to talk about development. But anyhow, you can decide to locate and to move this guide into another area inside Betterworks. That can be inside the conversation page, inside the objectives page, and also in the home page and so on. So depending on the different purpose, you can also move your guide.
Absolutely. And I think this is a great example of kind of tying the different programs that you have. So you've got the conversations, which are for employee development. You have the learning through LinkedIn Learning, so for additional training. And this really reinforces the message that if there's something that comes up in a conversation that you want a team member to work on or to direct them to some more resources, it's right there. They don't kind of have to go somewhere else. It kind of puts everything front of mind.
Exactly.
Great. And then this was another use that you found within the OKR settings.
Exactly. This is a different location because here we are inside the goal setting page, so where you can create the new OKR. And we recently implemented the new categories that are reflecting our strategy. And we just wanted at the beginning of 2021 to communicate, to better communicate. So this is about communication. I mean, these new categories available for our OKRs. That was the right moment because we were at the beginning of 2021. And so that we designed this guide mainly related, please be sure while you are set up your OKRs, please be sure to select the right category for your OKR. Then we decided to change the color, so we have the possibility for doing this. So we tested several colors, and we just put it as gold because we thought it was important just to highlight this information. Yeah. And again, this is a pop-up guide.
Yeah. And for those of you who are current Betterworks customers, you're familiar with the categories in the OKR module, where you can set essentially what is a tag to an objective. And categories can be used in a number of different ways. So some organizations use them to highlight aspirational versus committed objectives, things that are kind of for the business versus personal development, or what's really common as Vertiv used it is to highlight strategic themes. And I think what was helpful here about having additional instructions is that Vertiv had rolled out new strategic themes in 2021 as part of their 3-year strategy. So this was guiding people to like, hey, here are the new categories and this is what they mean, because Vertiv had used some categories in the past, but they weren't going to be relevant anymore now that there was this new 3-year strategy. So it was a way to highlight that update and keep that top of mind. And then you also use conducting a survey.
Exactly. So here we ran a survey. I think this is related 1 year ago, more or less. We needed to run a survey around the quarterly conversation, and I know that there's a possibility to run poll or questions using this guide, but as we have Microsoft form to design questionnaire, we decided to design first a guide here where we put the link of several questionnaires that we have depending on the language. So we created this sort of matrix, adding a specific button for the languages, and all these buttons are related to specific survey translated in specific language. So we use this as a sort of bridge with our survey in Microsoft form. And it was very useful because this is not a pop-up guide because there's no badge info icon, but whenever you enter inside Betterworks, you will have at the first click this guide appearing. So this is the first action that it requires to do. So taking the survey, and then you can navigate through the site. This is another way to implement.
Yeah, and I thought this was great because the survey was about the conversation process. And so it put it right there in the context of you've just completed your conversation. Here's a reminder to complete a quick survey. We also offer Betterworks Engage as a survey tool that we offer as well. And so you could link that through the guide here. But Vertiv chose to just use the survey that they were using, but just to put it front and center for people. And I think you had a pretty good response rate for this survey, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely. If I remember correctly, something like 4,000 people who answered to this survey. So it's quite good.
Fantastic.
The most difficult part was collecting all the answers and making the analysis.
Yep. And then this was another one where Vertiv customized. So when we launched a new UI at Betterworks last year, we did a Betterworks guide that we pushed to our customers, but Vertiv chose to customize this through their own guides.
Exactly. This is another example about a message that we want to communicate through the site and through Betterworks. So we launched this new user interface for Betterworks, and we just wanted to communicate the difference between the old and the new interface. So we designed this guide. This is, if I remember correctly, 2-step guide. So if you want to know more, you can click the button, and then you have again a quick a slide where it is explained what is the difference between the old and the new interface.
All right, so those are some of the ways that Vertiv's use guides, that they've been really creative in finding those solutions. So, but to look at it overall, I wanted to ask about what's been the overall impact of guides? What have you seen since you rolled this out?
So for us, for me personally, it was a huge impact because managing first the translations was really great, having a unique tool to communicate the languages and the translation during the conversation. It was the main big change. And there's some work to do before in terms of setup. But I have to say that it's worth it because again, when you implement in the first guide for the first, for example, in our case, for the first conversation, then you just need to copy and paste and changing the location to the new conversation. So the setting page for this guide is really easy to use, and it was really a good change for us.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Oh, keep going.
No, I was saying that we have other example. We just explained the importance, for example, of LinkedIn Learning, not to communicate LinkedIn Learning. In this guide system, we have the possibility to run some analysis, to have some metrics to see if people looked at the guide, how many visitors we had in the specific period of time. And for example, in the example of LinkedIn Learning, we saw, as we put this guide during the quarterly conversation, we have a great visibility about LinkedIn Learning, and we had also an increase of people who joined the program thanks to this guide inside the quarterly conversation. This just to say that this can be an alternative tool to communicate important things about programs and development.
Great, and that's an important point. I'm glad you brought up that when you're setting up the guides, you also have an admin panel where you can see analytics and activity and just insights on what are people clicking on, who's using it, who does it go to. Great. And then I wanted to ask you to speak a little bit about the setup process. And you touched on it a bit, but how did you get started with guides?
So the setup process, of course, I had to take a training to better familiarize with the admin panel. Again, I think it's for me it was really easy to use, and I'm a psychologist, so if I can do this, I think that most of you can do the same. And again, it's really easy to use. I think that the most important thing is understanding that you have several ways through which you can communicate this kind of things inside the system. So being creative and trying to find alternative ways. For example, as we did for the survey, because usually we communicate the survey through our email, but you know, Betterworks is a tool that that we can use also for communicating these tasks. For example, the survey, the implementation of the new programs, and so on. So it's not difficult to set the first guide. Personally, really is easy to do. And once you get the first guide for the translation in our case, then everything was fine from this part.
Perfect. Yeah, and we also offer, so Vertiv does have people who kind of a team dedicated to this, but we also at Betterworks offer support to help get those set up. You know, for even though it's straightforward, we can help kind of take some of that work off your plate as well. I'm going to move into Q&A. Did have a question come up about whether the tool itself remains in English when you're using those translations. So I can actually answer that. So Betterworks, we do offer a translation for our platform. We have like 14 different languages that we support, and users can set their language settings. And that does translate content that's native to the platform. platform. So, anywhere you see like objectives, conversations, any instructions that are in the platform, those are translated. But content that's entered by users is not translated by the platform. So that would be the case with a conversation where the admin is creating the questions. And that's why it's helpful to have those pop-ups to translate within a single conversation. And then another question we got was about including video in the pop-ups. Is that something that you've been able to do?
I can answer here, yes. I know that you can include video from YouTube directly to have the video inside the communication, but as we did in the past, you can create a link. If you have, for example, some video in Vimeo or in another format, you can just take the link, add this link in the guide, and then users will be able to click the link and having the video appearing.
Yeah, so that's another kind of creative way. All right, I think that is it for questions. So just to, in closing, thank you to everyone for joining today. I see that there are a number of current Betterworks customers on the call, but for those of you who are new to Betterworks, just a little reminder, what we do, we close the loop between people, strategy, and results, help align even your most sprawling and dynamic teams. If you enjoyed our discussion today, I encourage you to join our Betterworks community in the loop. This is a Slack community that you can join that will connect Betterworks customers and other leaders to have discussions about some of the topics that we covered here today. So great resource for people who are in this line of work, and you'll receive a link to that in the follow-up. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone.